two teenage girls are dragged from their home by Roman soldiers. Their mother, a queen, is stripped and flogged in front of her own people. This was not an act of war, it was an act of contempt. Rome's way of telling a conquered people they were nothing. What the empire did not know was that this queen would answer with fire. Within weeks, she would burn 3 Roman cities to ash, and Rome would lose more people in a single uprising than in almost any war in its history. Her name was Boudica. For nearly 2 decades, Rome had ruled Britain not entirely through the sword, but through arrangement. Local kings who cooperated were allowed to keep a version of their thrones, their wealth, and their people, as long as they remembered who truly held the power. One such king was Prasutagus, ruler of the Iceni tribe in eastern Britain, a man who had spent his reign trying to balance loyalty to Rome with the survival of his own people. When he died in the year 60 AD, he left behind a will designed to protect everyone he loved. He named the Roman Emperor Nero as joint heir alongside his 2 daughters, hoping this gesture of goodwill would guarantee his kingdom's safety and his family's future. Rome did not honor a single word of it. Roman officials descended on the Iceni court almost immediately. The kingdom was declared conquered property, not inherited territory. Tribal nobles had their family estates seized outright, and then came the cruelty that would ignite an empire-wide crisis. Boudica, the widow queen, was publicly flogged in front of her own subjects. Her 2 daughters were violated by Roman soldiers, an act of humiliation deliberately staged to break the spirit of an entire people, not just one family. The message was simple and brutal. You are not allies. You are property. Boudica did not break. She burned. Word spread through the tribal lands of Britain faster than any Roman messenger could ride. The Iceni rose first, and within days, the neighboring Trinovantes, a tribe with their own decades of grievances against Roman settlers, joined them. Soon, warriors from tribes across the region were converging on a single target, Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester, the first and proudest Roman colony in Britain, home to a massive temple built to worship the Emperor Claudius as a living god. To the Britons, that temple was not a place of worship. It was a monument to their own subjugation, built with taxes stolen from their own land. The city had almost no defensive walls. Roman veterans living there had grown complacent, convinced that decades of peace meant permanence. When Boudica's warriors arrived, there was no battle in the traditional sense. There was only slaughter. The city burned to the ground. Survivors who fled to the temple for shelter, believing its sacred stone walls would protect them, were besieged for 2 days before it too was overrun. A relief force from the 9th Legion marching to save the city was ambushed along the road and effectively annihilated. Most of its infantry cut down before they ever reached the burning colony. Rome's governor, Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, was hundreds of miles away, deep in a brutal campaign against the Druids on the island of Mona. When word reached him of the uprising, he understood immediately that this was no minor disturbance. This was an existential threat to Roman Britain itself. He raced south with whatever forces he could gather, but he faced an impossible choice. Ahead of him lay Londinium, not yet the capital it would one day become, but already a thriving, undefended trading town. Suetonius arrived, assessed his badly outnumbered forces, and made a decision that would haunt the province for years. He would abandon the city to save the army that could later reclaim it. Every citizen who chose to stay behind, believing Roman soldiers would surely return to protect them, was left to face Boudica's army alone. What followed was one of the most devastating massacres in Roman provincial history. Londinium burned, then Verulamium, modern St. Albans, burned as well. Roman historian Tacitus, writing decades later, claimed the death toll across all 3 cities approached 70,000 Romans, allied Britons, and collaborators. Men, women, and children shown no distinction and no mercy. Whether or not the exact number was exaggerated by later Roman writers eager to paint Boudica as a monster, the scale of destruction was undeniable. For the first and only time in centuries, a Roman province had come within a hair's breadth of being completely lost. But Suetonius Paulinus was not finished. While Boudica's forces grew intoxicated with victory, swelling with new recruits weighed down with plunder, trailed by an enormous train of wagons carrying entire families who had come simply to watch the final Roman defeat, the governor was doing something far more dangerous. He was choosing his ground. He selected a narrow valley, flanked by dense forest on both sides, with only a single open field ahead where an enemy could approach. It was the precise opposite of an open battlefield. Boudica's army, by most ancient accounts, outnumbered the Romans by 10 to 1, perhaps more. But numbers meant nothing in a space where only a few thousand men could physically reach the Roman line at any given moment. Suetonius had roughly 10,000 disciplined legionaries. Boudica had an overwhelming tide of warriors with no way to use that size to its advantage. The Britons charged first, confident, screaming, certain that sheer weight of numbers would crush the thin Roman line in an instant. The legionaries held their formation, absorbed the charge behind locked shields, then unleashed a devastating volley of javelins at close range before advancing in tight, disciplined wedges. A machine built for exactly this kind of controlled, funneled slaughter. The battle became a massacre in reverse. As the front ranks of Britons broke and tried to retreat, they collided with their own people still pushing forward from behind. And behind all of them stood a wall of their own wagons, packed with the very families who had come to watch a triumph. There was nowhere to run. Roman accounts claim as many as 80,000 Britons were killed in the final battle, a staggering, almost certainly inflated number. But even a fraction of that figure represents one of the bloodiest single-day slaughters Roman Britain ever recorded. Boudica escaped the battlefield, but not for long. According to Tacitus, she took her own life with poison rather than face capture, and the humiliation of a Roman triumph. Cassius Dio, writing later, offers a gentler account that she fell ill and died shortly afterward. Either way, the queen, who had come closer than almost anyone in Roman history to driving the empire out of an entire province, was gone within weeks of her greatest victory. The reprisals that followed were brutal. Roman forces burned Iceni settlements, seized what remained of their lands, and enforced a level of control the tribes had never known before. But the rebellion left a permanent mark on how Rome governed the province. The corrupt procurator whose greed had sparked the entire uprising was quietly replaced, and future governors were far more cautious about pushing client kingdoms past their breaking point. Rome had won, but it had won by the narrowest possible margin, against an enemy it had created through its own contempt. For nearly 2,000 years, Boudica's name faded into the margins of history, remembered mostly through the writings of the very empire she had nearly destroyed. It was not until the Victorian era, nearly 18 centuries later, that the British Empire itself, in a strange twist of history, reclaimed her as a national symbol, a warrior queen defying foreign domination. Her statue eventually raised within sight of the very river her rebellion once tried to burn to the ground. The lesson of Boudica is not simply that an empire can be humbled. It is that contempt has a cost. Rome did not lose 70,000 lives in Britain because Boudica was a brilliant strategist from the start, or because her warriors were better armed or better trained. Rome lost those lives because a corrupt official believed a grieving widow and her daughters were too powerless to matter, and because an empire that prided itself on order could not imagine that the very people it humiliated might answer not with silence, but with fire. So the next time you find yourself dismissing someone as powerless, harmless, or simply beneath your notice, a rival, an employee, a competitor you've wronged and assumed would simply absorb it, remember a queen standing in front of her own people, scarred, humiliated and very much still alive. Some people do not break, they remember. And when they finally answer, the fire does not ask who deserves to burn. If this story of vengeance, empire, and one queen's fire pulled you in, subscribe for more untold stories from the ancient world. And hit like if you want more of history's most explosive rebellions brought to life. Comment below. Do you think Boudica was a hero, a monster, or simply someone Rome created through its own cruelty? Thank you for watching. And remember, the quietest victims often start the loudest fires.